We are beyond honored to have David with us today. David is somebody that I accidentally met a long time ago in New Orleans. Wives were doing Beachbody, the whole thing. So we got to meet in New Orleans. I've been following what he's been up to. Love his story, love what he has going on. So David, excited to have you on, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. Those crazy times over in New Orleans, right?
Hey, that was fun. It was some people you can just immediately meet and have a good time with, and it worked out. It was a good time.
100%. So David, I know your story. I've kind of been following what you've been doing but for those that maybe don't know you, that have not been following, what were you doing before investing, before trading, before all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the restaurant industry, hospitality industry. My grandparents owned a restaurant. My parents owned a restaurant. And so I grew up in that. My sister's a trained chef. So I wasn't always in the restaurant industry, went to college for finance and business. I got out of it for a little while, got into corporate, figured, or found out that the 9-to-5 really wasn't for me. And so got back into the family business, so to speak. But this time I decided I was going to go out on my own and open my own restaurant. Did that. And, the restaurants, I'm sure a lot of people have probably worked in a restaurant, some shape, form, or fashion in their life. And it just consumed my life. I was looking for something different, but that's what I was doing before I found trading, running my restaurant, owner-operator.
How long have you been doing that?
Coming on 10 years.
So where did trading come into the picture? So you've got the restaurant, you've gone out on your own. It's a family kind of heirloom, so to say. Where does trading come about in this story?
So actually, one of my friends, we had just been friends for a while, and I was, having kids, and the restaurant was getting busier, but wasn't finding, I wasn't getting any relief. It was really hard to find good employees. Leveraging myself and scaling myself just wasn't happening like I wanted to happen. So, just really confiding in one of my buddies saying, hey man, I'm really just looking for something different. I think I'm pretty much done with the restaurant business. I'm ready to close it. I'm ready to move on. If I can find something that, can support me and my family, I'll close the doors tomorrow. And so, we just kind of like buddy talk, just talking back and forth. And then he called me up one day and said, hey man, I know a while back you said you were looking for something different. I don't know if this is going to be anything. I mean, he was brand new to trading as well. He had no experience. I had no experience. And he said, but I've joined this community that supposedly, they can teach me how to trade the markets, and I'm going to give it a shot. And I thought of you, it might turn into something, maybe not. It was very low key, hey, I don't know if it's going to work, but it's worth a shot. And I said, well, what are we trading? And he said, well, they're trading Forex. I literally had never even heard the word Forex. I said, what's Forex? And so everybody gives me a hard time about it, but I had to go Google it and figure out what Forex was. But yeah, that's how it came about. Just one of my buddies offhand said, hey, you want to learn how to trade.
So at that point, did you sell the restaurant, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so no, it was a process. It was a process over, really almost 2 years, probably. I forget. It's between a year and 2 years was just the process of seeing if this was real. Because I'm not going to just, obviously close the restaurant and go out on a whim on something that I'm not sure about. I never even heard about. Over the next year and a half, probably just diving into the training, doing what the mentors were saying to do in the nooks and crannies of my life. Obviously being owner operator of a restaurant it'll keep you busy. So I was working, some days I was working 16, some days 18-hour days, sleeping at the restaurant sometimes, because I had to be there at 3:30 in the morning, and sometimes we wouldn't get out of there till 11 o'clock at night. So, it was very limited time, but, if somebody wants it bad enough, you just have to fit it into the nooks and crannies. So I would listen to training while I was driving. I had a 45-minute drive to my house, one way. And so while I was driving, I'd listen to training. On the way home, I'd listen to training. During the slow parts of the day, it's usually between lunch and dinner, I'd jump in the office, jump on the charts, watch some training, mark up some things. So, just really kind of doing anything I could, because basically if I knew that if I didn't do anything at all, I was just going to be stuck in the restaurant. Something had to change.
Yeah. So a lot of people have it in their head that they're just going to magically succeed, and that it doesn't take any time. It doesn't take any sacrifice. Your experience, my experience has been, is it takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication. I've been getting up 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, doing trading and learning and going through videos like you're talking about, listening to different mentors in different communities before my kids get up, before my wife gets up, before I come to this office and do this job. It's worth it for sure. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, but there is a sacrifice and there is a learning curve that most people are not willing to do, period.
Absolutely. Most people think it's get rich quick. And unfortunately, a lot of that is, what they've been fed, from somebody trying to take advantage of them online or whatever it is. They're fed that, yeah, it's get rich quick, plug in and, you'll be a millionaire tomorrow. But that's not the case. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of frustration sometimes. There were plenty of times in my journey where I wanted to quit. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But, for lack of better terms, my back was against the wall. And so I said, no, let's keep pushing forward. Like you said, the reward can be great, but there is definitely a lot of sacrifice, and it's not get rich quick overnight. The best when it comes to trading, and this is a different topic altogether, but that slow and steady, it wins the race. That small compound, not looking for that home run. You're looking for a lot of base hits.
I think it's actually worse and can even be detrimental for somebody if they do get a really, really quick win in the very beginning. I'm just thinking back to like my first couple of weeks, like I had like a 30% week and I made 25% on one trade. That was actually worse for me than slow and steady.
Yep.
Because in my brain, it was like, oh my gosh, like look at all this money I can make. If I just like add another X amount of dollars, like I could turn that into, brain starts going, and then you start looking at like compound calculators. Mm-hmm. And if I just did this every day, David, my God.
Oh yeah.
So for me, it was actually worse for me that I had a quick win and I was super confident. This is like week 1, week 2. Right. It was terrible for me. It really was.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's typically the way it goes, is because most people, and it's really oxymoron when you think about it, because people have success with trading typically because they are confident. They don't have that fear holding them back of, you touch the stove so many times and get burned, you're going to be afraid to touch it again, right? But if you're new, you're not. You're just swinging. And that's somewhat of what it takes to be successful, is just execute like a robot, which is what most new people are doing. Eventually they get burned, and then they start, that fear starts creeping in and stuff like that. But in the beginning, they have that massive success in their minds anyway, and that, quick success, and then risk management goes out the window. Right? That's the worst part, is that's where people blow accounts and things like that, because they're just like, oh, well, risking 2%, well, let's risk 10%, or even more. So it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. And you start revenge trading and all of that, and it's just detrimental. And then everything's a scam, right? Well, it didn't make sense. I didn't make any money. So it's a scam.
Exactly.
It's gotta be. Yeah. So I mean, like, walk me through, because a lot of people in our community are either they've been trading for multiple months or they're considering jumping into potentially trading. How difficult was it in the beginning for you? I know you're juggling a bunch of family. At that point, I think you had multiple kids. You're doing this kind of in between on the side. Like, how difficult was, say, your first 6 months?
It was an emotional roller coaster, and that's where trading, usually gets most people, or conquers most people, is that emotional side, right? Because I did the same thing, just like everybody does. I came in, had quick success, over leveraged, blew up. It was a small account, but for me, it was, at the time, it represented my freedom. And so when that account was gone, it was like, oh, well, I'm back to square one, and then you have the depression, all that kind of stuff sink in. So it was tough. And back then, it's the same community, but it's just grown and evolved in leaps and bounds. Like back then, we weren't teaching mindset, right? We weren't talking about that. Nobody was really talking about that. It wasn't just kind of jump in, watch the training, and hope you do good. But it's when you really work on the mindset first, that's the part that'll change it. But back to your question, yeah, it was tough. It was multiple times where I wanted to quit. I wanted to call it a scam. I want to say it didn't work, but I was the person that was doing what I shouldn't have been doing, over leveraging, revenge trading, like you said, not following exactly what the mentor said to do. So it was a tough, road, but eventually, if you can weather that storm, and, everybody kind of goes through it, right? I mean, even if we'll tell somebody to do it this way, they're still going to try it their way first. That's just human nature. And if they're willing, they eventually kind of get broken enough to say, okay, I've tried it my way. It didn't work. I'm going to do it your way. And so eventually I got to that point. I was like, you know what? Tried it my way. Let me just try it exactly like the mentors say to do it. And, I did start working on my mindset. It was actually kind of, I heard one of the mentors at the time say, he mentioned an author, Mark Douglas, right? And, most people know who that is nowadays, but back then I had no idea. And so I started just on my own researching that and getting into mindset trading, stuff like that. So it started to come together. And then once things kind of, come together, then you're a little encouraged, which gets you a little bit further, and then gets you a little bit further. So, it came down to time management a lot. Like you said, very busy. I had 3 kids at the time when I started learning, running the restaurant. So I just tried to manage my time. I did make sacrifices, but just a day by day thing. I told myself if I could be a little bit better than I was the day before, we'll keep going and we'll see where it goes.
So you just unpacked a lot there. You have how many kids now? Because you just have like
5.
75.
Yeah, just 5. Just 5. Don't put that on.
I was off by 70.
Not too bad. It feels like 70.
So yeah, I mean, and as you know, we just have the one, but we've got another one coming in September, and I'm like, I have no idea how David does it.
It takes a village for sure. My wife does probably the bulk of the work when it comes to it. So very blessed to have her help, but it's, it just takes a village. You just take it day by day, screaming, crying, fighting. It's just the way it goes.
100%, man. So what kept you going? You blow an account, you over leverage, etc. Your first 6 months are difficult. You're managing a lot. You probably had every opportunity in the world to pull out and just to quit. And you kind of have a safety net still. You have the restaurant,
Right.
which at that point I believe is still going.
Yep.
What kept you in the game?
Really just, I got to the point where I hated the restaurant. Like I hated it. Like I felt depressed. I felt angry. Like I did, getting up in the morning was a trap for me because I knew what I had to do. I had to go into the restaurant. Like it became my worst nightmare every day. And I was just living in it and I was trapped in it. And so I didn't have time to do anything else. I knew I couldn't, it just closing down the restaurant and going, obviously you have investment in the restaurant. There was a lot of monetary things going on. It's like, it made more sense to get something going while the restaurant was still operating. Like you said, my safety net, because I did have 3 kids and I can't remember if we had one on the way at that point or not. But the point was, there's a lot on my shoulders, there's a lot of responsibility. And so I couldn't just, up and just close it. So my back was against the wall and I just like, what, I've got to make this thing work. And of course, I'm talking to some of my mentors at the time and things like that, obviously you get encouraged and you can see kind of the proof in the pudding from other people's results and stuff like that. So that kept me going, talking to mentors, keep me going, working on my mindset, listening to people like Mark Douglas. That kept me going because it made sense to me. And, and for lack of better terms, I was desperate. I was like, I cannot continue in the restaurant. I got to do something else.
Well, and especially if you're doing both. So something has to give. You either have to drop one of them or you have to be mediocre at both. And at some point, something has to give. Right. But I like what you said about back being up against the wall. And it's interesting because a lot of people that have a safety net never get to that point. It's like, it just didn't work out. Well, dude, you've been trying for 4 days. Of course it didn't work out. You made 5 trades over 4 days and you just think that it was just going to happen, man. So most people that I see right now that are really not succeeding do have a safety net. They're very comfortable and they're not at a place of desperation, which I think is so cool about your story. But I want to go back to the mindset stuff because it is such a pivotal part of Forex and business and just being an entrepreneur, managing a house, managing emotions. Like the mindset of it is so pivotal. And I tell people all the time, like your biggest asset is you. It's not Forex. It's not crypto. It's not investing. You are the asset. If you can control you, now you have a good asset. But if you cannot control you, you have a broken asset that's not going to succeed, period. So on the mindset stuff, I'll list a couple of them, but maybe we can delve into that a little bit more. I'd say consistency is huge. You touched on that. Patience. I'm trading right now like the 30-minute and the 1-hour chart. And it's just like I wait around sometimes for 3, 4, 5 hours before I make a trade. And being an entrepreneur, it drives me crazy. Right?
Yes.
So like I get to do calls like this in between trades and it's great, but just being impatient. What else would you add to that list? Because I know there's a lot under the mindset category.
Yeah, probably one of the biggest ones, the fear of being wrong. People are so afraid of being wrong, and there's so much psychology behind that could be another hour-long webinar. But we're brought up our entire lives to don't make mistakes, don't get a bad grade, don't do this, don't do that, don't fail. We see that as failure. But with trading, that doesn't work that way. Like getting a trade, losing a trade doesn't mean necessarily. Now there's things we can obviously evaluate from every loss, but it doesn't mean you did something wrong. And so many times people will get into a string of losers and then they're on to the next thing, right? They're on to the next shiny object. And it could, maybe they're still trading, but they're on to a new strategy. They're on to a new indicator. They're on to whatever. And so that's what I see a lot happen is, with trading, it's a probabilities game, right? And so people really don't ever wrap their mindset around that there's going to be wins and losses. And if you do listen to people like Mark Douglas, obviously I didn't come up with this content myself originally, but you have to look at trading as a set, 20 to 25 trade. And so we obviously, we like the 25 trade set is kind of what we preach a lot. It's where within that 25 trade set of trades, you're going to have wins and losses and you do not know what distribution they're going to have, right? You could have 8 wins in a row and then you could have 9 losses in a row. But if you end that 25 trade set profitably, then your edge is still playing out in your favor. Well, what happens is people get into a losing streak, which inevitably happens. And then, oh, this doesn't work. And then they're on to a new thing and they start all over, where all they really need to do was look at it on a macro level instead of the micro level, each individual trade, and see, okay, am I still profitable at the end of 25 trades? And if they are, then maybe there's a few things you can tweak to try to help that. But most people are just on to the next shiny thing. And that's the biggest thing that we see helping or making people fail is they just keep jumping and jumping and jumping.
You mentioned something as well that I see it all the time is my mistakes and my losses are normally on me. I think I can predict the market. I think I can catch it one more time. I was tempted to do that just a minute ago on US oil. I was like, oh, I did it once, I can do it again. When the rules, quote unquote, were, hey man, you're done, you're out. You made your couple percent, like you're good for the day. I mean, I see this all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just almost kind of that God complex, right? Oh, I did it. I'm kind of invincible. And then, I can do it again. And then you get smacked and then you start revenge trading potentially and stuff like that. It's definitely a slippery slope. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning, right? Consistency, right? Get your whatever percentage you're going for and then move on, get it and go and move on. And, whenever your trade setup happens, there's so many things about this, but people take a couple of losses. And then when their trade setup actually happens, they're afraid to take it because now they're remembering their losses. And it's just, it's so much goes into it. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mindset war, and it takes a lot of really, and you kind of hit on it yourself earlier, which you're the asset, right? So if you can master your emotions, your insecurities, your fears, your greed, all those things, that's going to help you more than anything. You could have crappiest strategy out there, but if you have a very solid and powerful mindset with yourself, like you're aware of your insecurities, you're aware of your flaws, you're aware of all this stuff, and you own it and you're aware of it before it happens, you can still crush it.
And where I was going with that was almost all of my losses were self-inflicted, right? So it's not necessarily like the system or the setup. There's hundreds of them out there, if not thousands. They all probably work or can work, right? The problem is that when we start doing things outside of that and we start to think that, you said God complex, I just know what's going to happen, or I think I know what's going to happen without waiting for whatever system you're using to actually be set up accurately. So if I went back and would take out all of my human errors, it'd be lights out. Absolutely. But we're human.
Right.
It's really, really interesting. So you've been doing this for how long at this point?
6 years.
6 years full time?
No, it's probably somewhere around four full time, something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Right. I love it. You're coaching people. I know you've been sharing your journey a lot. What do you see? So there's a lot of new people coming in. I know we talked a lot about mistakes, but what are you seeing as some of the biggest mistakes it seems like there's like this new wave of Forex people. It was really big a while ago. Right. Remember all of the scams, and like every day when I jump on Facebook, I would see something about Forex. Kind of chilled out. Now there's a lot more people that are coming into it. But what are some like the big mistakes that you're seeing from some of these newer guys?
Yeah, I memean, definitely, obviously, over risking is one of the big mistakes. They're not using proper risk. Just over trading is obviously a huge one. They get on there and, they think the more they trade, the more they can win, which that's not always the case. Obviously, the proper expectations, which we talked about a little bit earlier, right? They're coming in thinking that this is get rich quick instead of looking at it as, I'm just going to practice with this at first, right? Get to know the market, get to know certain assets, whatever they're trading, whether it's anything, and a lot of mistakes people make, which I would not personally, if I was a new person, I never recommend to our new people, is to jump into the very volatile assets like US 30, right? It moves very fast. It's very volatile. There's very big movements in the market. We are obviously Euro USD, something like that. It's going to be more solid, more predictable in a sense. Whereas most people want to go straight to I heard I can make a lot of money on US 30. So they start trading US 30 on the 1 minute when they're brand new. With
a one lot size or a two lot size or something, something exactly. Crazy.
And it's just gambling, it's just, they're gambling. Maybe it'll go up, and we'll see what happens. But that's probably one of the biggest things, is just not treating it like an investment in their future, an education that they're going to have to do, start in chapter 1 and work their way through the book. They want to jump all the way to the end and start trading US 30 on the 1 minute. And that's just a recipe for some heartache right there.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
Many, many things, actually.
So, how would you suggest somebody start? I know you mentioned Euro USD, but would you recommend somebody who's doing like a test account, using their own money? I've got my own opinion about it, but somebody's just trying to learn and get that education and kind of gain that experience. Like, what do you think in that sense?
Yeah, there's very differing ideas about this, and depending on who you ask. I personally, I always recommend people start on a demo, right? Because, and people will say, well, full emotions on using a demo account, that kind of thing. I mean, sometimes yes, but we've had people scared to place trades because they're afraid they're going to be wrong on their demo, because they're seeing it kind of like I did. I saw it as, well, that's my freedom there. So, if I make a mistake, then that represents that I'm not gonna make this thing work. I'm not gonna master it. And so they're just so afraid to be wrong. And so, it really, you can have the emotions with either account. But yeah, I definitely would recommend people starting a demo account. It's kind of like riding your bike. If you're going to learn to ride a bike, you're going to fall off. Everybody falls off when they're learning to ride a bike. You're going to make mistakes when you're learning how to trade. You're going to lose money in the beginning. Well, it could be any time, but you're going to be more apt to lose money in the beginning when you're brand new. And so why do that, in my personal opinion, on a live account? Why put real money at risk when you are going to make mistakes? You need to make mistakes. That's how you learn. Oh, I did that. That didn't work. So I'm not going to do that again. But why do it? Why not do it where there's a safety net underneath you, instead of, well, now my rent money's gone and, I've got to save up again before I can even start practicing again. It's just, there's a lot of issues with that. So yeah, I would recommend demo account personally.
So I did a little bit of both. I did a $200,000 demo account because I was working on a prop account. I was like, well, I want to get the lot sizes dialed in and like understand like the risks and like the margins and all of that.
Right.
I actually did worse with that account than my $2,000 live account.
Gotcha.
So I think it does depend a little bit, and you mentioned this, but I think it does depend a little bit on the person. And is it going to be devastating to you psychologically if you do have a loss while you're training your brain, while you're getting used to things? It probably depends. I, to an extent, didn't want to lose my $2,000. So it really forced me to stop revenge trading and operating outside of the system, which is where I was losing all my money. I think I agree with starting with a demo account for sure, but also like figure out how you learn best, I would say.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that for sure. No, I said, yeah, different people learn different ways. So kind of depends on your pain points and your driver.
100%. And is this your first experience to like operating a business and like investing, or have you been doing it for a while? And what's your personality type? There's probably a lot that goes into that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most people are not risky people. They're not entrepreneurs. Most people are, brought up that way, right? Get a job, get a safe job, make good grades, that kind of thing. So definitely for a lot of people, thought of risk is very unappealing.
For sure. We'll see if there's any questions online as well. There might be a couple. Claire had posted a couple, but I know a lot of people are interested in this field. A lot of people are interested in getting started. If somebody wanted to maybe follow you or follow your journey or even get more information about what you guys do, what would be an appropriate way to do that?
Yeah, so I would just probably go to my website, therealdavidthomas.com. You can contact me there. There's multiple ways: Telegram, Messenger, Facebook, Instagram. And then you can also find me on social media as well through that page. So it's probably the best way to do it. I'm happy to help in any way, even if you just have some questions about trading in general. I'm always happy to help. That's what we're here.
Absolutely. I've known David for a long time. Loved watching his journey, following what he's been doing. Highly recommend. Been on several of your calls. They were all really, really good. I know you've done a training in here before with Carl as well.
Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in this type of an investment, I know we talk about a lot. If you guys are curious, I highly recommend you guys check out his stuff.
I appreciate it.
A couple more questions, man, then I'll let you go.
Sure.
Right now with crypto and DeFi being bananas,
right?
Everyone's getting rugged. Everyone is they're just getting wrecked. They're losing a lot of money. What's kind of your thought process around that, where I'm kind of under the impression that I want to be in control. If I lose money, it's going to be on me, but I'm not going to get rugged by somebody else. Like, are you seeing more of that, or kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you 100%. It's definitely it's a battleground out there right now. A lot of people saying different things. I'm a crypto expert by any means, but I obviously am in that industry and I hear a lot about it. But yeah, I would highly recommend, like you said, being more in control of your funds and making sure that you are, and you know exactly what you're investing in, and certainly not getting crazy with all of these promises and, poop coins that are out there, right? Just make solid investments, solid education before you invest in those things. And yeah, like you said, always be in control.
We saw projects recently that lost 80%, 90%, 95%.
Yeah.
I'm relatively new to trading and that hasn't happened. There's parameters you can put in place, there's stop losses, there's education that you can get involved in where you can constantly get better. But you're in control. I think that's why so many people are attracted to it, is they can look at guys like, your mentors and you and like these other people that are seeing some success in this industry and saying, man, I could do that.
Right.
I want to be in control, versus some guy I've never met on the internet. I'm giving him all my money or a large chunk of that. And he said he's doing blank, but we really have no idea what he's actually doing.
Oh yeah. There's so many bad things that happen with stuff like that. I'm not going to say there's not any that are the real deal out there. I haven't yet seen one, but just the promise of high returns. And, and that's kind of what you mentioned earlier, right? As being new, like we're like, oh, well, if we can make this much, let's just put in a lot more. And that's what usually gets people, right? They get them a little bit, they say they've made them a little money, and then they ask them for a whole bunch more and they put it in, and then they never see them again. So yeah, don't fall for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. David, final words, final thoughts we got people that are watching obviously live, post the replay, but final thoughts, or maybe, I guess I want to call it advice because I know we don't give financial advice, but anything else that you'd like to say to people that are either new or considering getting into Forex?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see there are some questions, so I'm happy to answer those as well. But when it comes to, getting involved with the space, we kind of touched on it earlier, just have proper expectations that this is like any other skill that you have to learn, right? It's going to take time. You need to take it slow. You need to, go through, get the proper education, whether it's, it's a community like we're in or whatever community you find that you want, that you vibe with. But don't just go out there, find some free strategy on YouTube, and then all of a sudden start, trying that with your rent money. That's what a lot of people do. So it's not gamble. It's not a lottery. This is just a probability. It's a calculated risk based on your edge, which is whatever your strategy is you're trading. And hopefully it's a proven strategy. Hopefully it's vetted. And then you spend 25% on strategy, then 75% on mindset, right? Mindset should be your biggest focus, because that's going to be, your biggest asset.
Mindset, practicing, being insanely consistent, like you mentioned, like what was it, 25 trades. So mindset, consistency, zoom out. So often we're so zoomed in on something, a trade or a sequence of trades, we don't zoom out and see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
You might actually be doing really, really well.
Absolutely. You might be just
So
being.
one of the questions from Richmond was about, a percentage target, like on a day-to-day basis. I can answer that. You can answer it, whatever you want to do there.
What I usually tell people this, obviously, once again, just stay compliant. I'm not going to tell you what percentage to go for, but really what I tell people is your journal a lot of times is going to be, or really is what's going to tell you what percentage you should go for. So obviously you should be keeping a trading journal. That's key. How can you learn if you don't know what you did right, what you did wrong? And you should be evaluating. Don't just keep the journal, actually evaluate it. Have your mentors evaluate it, right? And after you get, let's say 25 trades, say 3 to 4 blocks of 25 trades, you should start to see a pattern of, okay, I see that after these 25 trades, I'm usually making this X percentage. So, let your journal tell you what's realistic for you, because somebody, what might be realistic for them might not be realistic for you, or you might blow them out of the water, right? So let your own trading, your own history, your own journal tell you what you should be able to do on a consistent basis.
I would add to that, like, again, back to zoom out. For people in my industry, which is where I started with real estate, 9% a year, 9 is considered phenomenal.
Right.
So zoom out a little bit, what do you want to accomplish in what time frame? You look at it that way, then I guess you could probably just work the math backwards.
Right.
As an example, let's say just some random made up number, you wanted to make 20% in a year. Well, work it backwards. What is that a month? What is that a week, etc. That way you at least have a target. You at least have some sort of a true north, like a North Star. And then you can start to, based on your journal and based on what you're tracking, are you on pace? Are you crushing it? Are you way behind? Do you need to adjust that goal? Like, there's a lot into it, guys.
Absolutely.
100%. Is any other questions? Richmond, appreciate that question. Any other questions here really quick? Ken or Amber or Ryan?
Claire,
John, I know John's trading pretty actively.
Claire,
Adam Tracy on the call.
I see Claire asked, when do I take profit off the table? So once again, definitely your journal is going to help you do that, Claire, but it's going to be based, you should have some sort of target. Now, we trade smart money concepts, right? So we know that equal highs, equal lows in the market are usually good targets to have. So if you're looking for a trade setup, what's the closest set of equal highs or equal lows, and then you can zoom out. We've been talking about this whole thing, right? Zoom out a little bit, look at the bigger picture and say, okay, where's the trend? Are we going, am I with trend? Am I counter trend? And then that, you could potentially milk some more out of that move if you're going with that trend, so it kind of depends on a few different things. For me, personally, I do have like a set that I like a set risk to reward that I like to get. But it also depends on the market that I'm trading. So if I think, this is not really realistic to get my goal for this trade, I'm going to settle for a little less, right? Or there's what we call a roadblock, something where that might reverse price right in front of my take profit. Well, then I'm probably going to move my take profit to in front of that roadblock, right? So there's a couple things you need to look at, but you'll see once you in your journal kind of the percentage that you're typically getting for the most part on every trade, and then you can use that to help you say, okay, I know most of my trades go this far. Well, then use that to your advantage, and then look and see, why are my trades only going that far? Is it hitting equal highs and equal lows and then reversing? Is it hitting a roadblock and reversing? Am I getting in a reversal zone? Those kind of things. So it's not really just a cut and dry, like you always need to go for risk to reward. You really have to take into effect some of the market variables as well.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. Really smart. Amber saying, great information. Thank you. Just absorbing this all. Absolutely, Amber. Appreciate you being on here.
Here you
guys, go check out David, what he's doing. The programs or the setups that he's involved in are good. A lot of people in our community are using them. Definitely recommend what they have going on. David, thanks again, man. Greatly appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's good to connect with you as always. And if I can help anybody, all y'all need to do is reach out. I'm always happy to help.
Absolutely. To turn this off, I have to walk all the way over there. So appreciate it, man. I'll send you a message here in a little bit.
Take care. Thanks.